Not every Mouseketeer retained their cherubic image after leaving the Mickey Mouse Club. Here are tragic details about the original Mickey Mouse Club cast. One would think that the sons of famed actor Mickey Rooney would be a huge pull for the fledgling Mickey Mouse Club. In fact, Rooney himself once claimed that Mickey Mouse was even named for him after he met Walt Disney as a kid. There is no documentation to back up Rooney's unlikely claim, but it is a fact that Rooney's sons, Mickey Jr. and Tim, were hired to appear on the Mickey Mouse Club based on their talents. The twosome were quite good at acting, dancing, and singing, but neither of them survived on the Mickey Mouse Club for very long. So, why did they end up leaving? According to several reports, the young brothers were fired after getting into trouble on the Disney lot. More specifically, the boys were apparently fooling around in the ink and paint department, the very room where mostly women artists applied magnificent colors to Disney's cartoons and movies. Nobody was around when Mickey Jr. and Tim snuck in and began switching the paint around by pouring it into the wrong colored cans. They were immediately fired.
Oh yeah, that was at the reunion.
The reunion?
There's Mickey and there's me.
Although each pursued other careers, their father became estranged from them. Claiming elder abuse by his family, Rooney Sr. left nothing to any of his 8 children when he died in 2014. 9-year-old Paul Peterson was a Mouseketeer who was fired after just 3 weeks with the Mickey Mouse Club show. In 2017, Peterson told the Courier and Press that one day casting crew member Lee Travers teased the boy relentlessly, calling him Mouse, a nickname he knew Peterson hated. Peterson finally retaliated. "I said, 'Don't call me that fatso,' and punched him in the stomach." At that moment, most unfortunately, Walt Disney himself was standing in the room and witnessed the whole thing. According to Peterson, Disney called him into his office that same day and fired him on the spot, though he later noted he's able to laugh about the incident now. Luckily for Peterson, he went on to become a teen idol. His biggest role was as Jeff on The Donna Reed Show from 1958 to 1966, but when the show ended, the young actor was at a loss as Hollywood turned its back on him. Thankfully, Peterson had a deep love of music and the talent to back it up, to fall back on. His debut album, Lollipops and Roses, arrived in 1962. Most importantly, Paul Peterson founded A Minor Consideration, a support group that helps young actors establish boundaries in the workplace and gives them guidance for what happens after the footlights fade. He still works to advocate for the rights and safety of child actors to this day. Johnny Crawford, son of renowned television editor Robert Crawford, became a Mouseketeer at age 9.
Well, Jimmy, I thought the Mouseketeers would like to meet my brother, Bobby, who's the second best fencer in the world.
Within a year, however, the talented actor had moved on and appeared in shows like Crossroads, The Lone Ranger, The Loretta Young Show, Sheriff of Cochise, and Whirlybirds. Today, though, Johnny Crawford is best remembered as Mark, the son of rancher Lucas McCain in The Rifleman. The show was a hit and the two stars had chemistry, but Mark McCain's innocence came a bit undone when Crawford appeared nude in the 1973 movie The Naked Ape. Produced by Hugh Hefner and co-starring Victoria Principal, the film starred Crawford as the ape who appears on a road trip being taken by some insecure teens who meet a couple of girls on the way. After the film's premiere, Crawford also made news as the first man to appear completely nude in Playboy magazine, and then went on to found the Johnny Crawford Orchestra and other projects. As of 2020, John was unfortunately suffering from Alzheimer's disease and having trouble meeting his medical bills. Thankfully, his friend and fellow former Mouseketeer Paul Peterson set up a GoFundMe campaign to help cover his expenses. London-born Doreen Tracy was among the original Mouseketeers and was so good she appeared in the Walt Disney film Westward Ho! The Wagons in 1956.
Doreen?
I think it's called a weather house.
She also appeared on The Donna Reed Show before embarking on a tour of performances for the military during the Vietnam War. Fellow Mouseketeer Tommy Cole later told The Sun that Doreen was affectionately nicknamed, quote, our Dodo by the Mickey Mouse Club cast, and was famous for always having a smile for everyone. Unfortunately, the self-proclaimed, quote, black sheep of Disney was still on company time when she posed nude in 1976. The nude photos of Tracy appeared in the December issue of Gallery magazine, in which the actress wore nothing but her mouse ears from the Mickey Mouse Club. After the magazine came out, Disney naturally took umbrage and fired Tracy over the photos. Years later, in her 2001 autobiography, Confessions of a Mouseketeer, Tracy openly expressed her regret at posing for the photos. You get caught up in your own ego, not paying attention. not seeing the full repercussions. That was enough for Disney, which welcomed the performer back with open arms and even invited her to appear in a Mouseketeer reunion in 2015. The reunion was Doreen's last public appearance on television. She died in 2018 after a battle with cancer. Little Karen Pendleton was just 9 years old when she got the job as Mouseketeer on the Mickey Mouse Club. Although her father was a movie set designer, Pendleton herself had no experience in acting when she landed the gig. She did, however, know how to tap dance, and that was enough to make her a hit on the show, often introducing cartoons for viewers to watch. And her talents were genuine, leading to roles in Disney's Westward Ho! The Wagons and The Magical World of Disney in 1956. When Karen's contract expired in 1959, Disney tried to keep her on, but her father decided it was best to decline the offer. Back in the real world, the girl was teased by her classmates for her time on the show. Pendleton ultimately married and began a family, giving birth to a daughter in 1973. A decade later, tragedy struck as Pendleton was in a car accident that left her paralyzed from the waist down. Still, Pendleton overcame the hardships, went on to earn a master's degree, and became an advocate for the disabled community. She appeared at several Mouseketeer reunions before she passed away in 2019. The Canadian-born Darlene Gillespie appeared on the Mickey Mouse Club for 3 seasons and developed a rivalry with fellow Mouseketeer Annette Funicello over who could be the show's top female star.
Hi there. I'm back.
Although Funicello won out with her own illustrious career, Gillespie did go on to appear in several television shows, notably National Velvet and Dr. Kildare in 1962. She also released some albums for Disney, as well as her own country music record under the name of Darlene Valentine. But Gillespie's personal life also became fraught with complications, beginning with 2 divorces in 1968 and 1983. Then, in 1998, Gillespie was convicted on a dozen counts for various crimes, including securities fraud, mail fraud, and perjury. She was sentenced the following year to 2 years in prison, but maintained her innocence throughout the ordeal. By 2011, after various other legal issues, she was a retired nurse living quietly in California. Dennis Day appeared on the Mickey Mouse Club show for 2 years before dropping into obscurity. After pairing up with his partner, Ernest Caswell, in the mid-1970s and appearing as a guest on a 1980 Mouseketeer reunion show, Day relocated to Oregon. There he did small acting jobs at living history performances and developed a successful line of jams and jellies with his partner. Then, in 2018, Day was reported missing by his partner. After 9 months of investigation, his former live-in handyman was arrested, along with 2 other women, in connection with Day's murder. Although the surviving performers have continued to appear in public, there have only been 2 official reunions for Disney's original Mouseketeers. The first one, in 1980, featured 31 of the original 39 Mouseketeers in a television special. Singer Paul Williams hosted the show, which included song and dance numbers by noted Mouseketeer Annette Funicello and the others. A special series of film montages also portrayed Mouseketeers Bobby Burgess, Darlene Gillespie, Cubby O'Brien, and Sharon Baird performing alongside footage of their younger selves. In 2015, a second reunion was held during Disney's D23 Expo, hosted by Lorraine Santoli, author of the official Mickey Mouse Club book. 7 remaining Mouseketeers, including Sherry Alberoni, Sharon Baird, Bobby Burgess, Tommy Cole, Darlene Gillespie, Cubby O'Brien, and Doreen Tracy were in attendance. As of today, 8 of the original Mouseketeers are still with us, which means another reunion could be on the horizon.
Songwriters, legendary voice actors, and an academic monkey. For Lost in Space cast members young and old, the family-friendly sci-fi series was an unforgettable stepping stone. Guy Williams started his career in minor film roles and modeling. He became world famous as Don Diego de la Vega, better known as Zorro in the hit Walt Disney TV series. His classic Hollywood image of a dashing hero made him the perfect Professor John Robinson in Lost in Space. According to the Los Angeles Times, not long after Lost in Space concluded, Williams relocated to Buenos Aires, Argentina, where his roles in The Prince and the Pauper, Captain Sinbad, as well as Lost in Space and Zorro were very popular. With his marriage ended and children grown, Williams had been living alone at the time of his death. After suffering a fatal heart attack in 1989, it was a week before Williams was discovered by police in his apartment. Guy Williams was awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2001. His son, Guy Williams Jr., gratefully accepted it on his father's behalf. June Lockhart played Maureen Robinson, the scientist and mom next door who could rescue her husband in deep space at one moment and hunt down hostile creatures in another.
Dr. Smith, I could just throttle you.
No violence, please, dear lady. I was only trying to help.
Lockhart came from a family of Hollywood actors. In MGM's 1938 version of A Christmas Carol, she appeared with her mother Kathleen and her father Gene Lockhart. Before Lost in Space, she spent 6 years with Lassie as Timmy's mother Ruth Martin. After Lost in Space, Lockhart joined the cast of Petticoat Junction. In addition to being a popular guest on game shows, talk shows, and holiday parades, June Lockhart continued to appear in popular series for decades to come. She had roles in Full House, Magnum P.I., Murder, She Wrote, and General Hospital. She also did some work as a voice actor, portraying Martha Day and Hanna-Barbera's These Are the Days. In addition to logging nearly 200 film and TV credits to date, the New York Post reports that Lockhart avidly followed political campaigns. Harry S. Truman was the first president she met in 1948, and she proceeded to attend presidential press briefings and following campaigns into the early 2000s. In 2013, she made American history of her own when NASA officially recognized her for her public support of the program, according to the Santa Monica Daily Press. Now 97, June Lockhart continues to act. Her most recent role is the voice of Alpha Control in the Lost in Space series reboot in 2021.
Jupiter 2, this is operations. You're all clear for landing. Welcome home, Robinsons.
Mark Goddard was a classically trained young actor in TV and films before he was cast as Major Don West on Lost in Space. His credits include iconic TV series like Gunsmoke and The Fugitive. After Lost in Space ended, he revealed in an interview with Pop Entertainment that he kept his work on the show hidden for several years after his co-star Guy Williams described the show as, quote, a career buster due to its goofy nature.
We vegetables can be violent too if we have to.
It turns out Goddard needn't have worried for his career. The actor has worked steadily on TV and in film ever since, with roles in films like Roller Boogie and shows such as General Hospital and One Life to Live. Goddard often reunited with his Lost in Space castmates, even making a cameo in the 1998 film adaptation. In his 2008 memoir To Space and Back and his 2016 follow-up 3 Years Lost in Space, Goddard describes how the quirky series that he once thought would end his career proved its staying power to each new generation. Marta Kristen played the young Judy Robinson in the series, the oldest Robinson daughter who always seemed to be under the watchful eye of Major West. Before Lost in Space, Kristen appeared in several high-profile TV series, including Leave It to Beaver and The Loretta Young Show. In the movies, her roles included The Magical Lorelei and Beach Blanket Bingo. The Spectrum reports that in real life, Kristen's mother put her up for adoption in her native Oslo, Norway, to prevent the Nazis from putting her in their Lebensborn program for raising racially pure children during World War II. Instead, Kristen was brought up in an underground orphanage in Norway, where she was later adopted by an American couple. Years after Lost in Space, Kristen visited her birth mother in Europe, eventually meeting some of the 9 siblings she never knew she had. Kristen made an appearance in the 1998 feature film adaptation of Lost in Space. She also remained active in TV series, commercials, and Los Angeles area theater. More recently, she played a recurring role in the series The Vamps Next Door, and continues to coach young actors, according to Pop Entertainment. Though barely a teen when he played Will Robinson on Lost in Space, Bill Mumy has been acting since the age of 3. He was unforgettable in Alfred Hitchcock Presents as a boy who innocently finds his parents' gun. He was chilling as Anthony Fremont in the much-imitated episode of The Twilight Zone, It's a Good Life.
You're a bad man. You're a very bad man. And you keep thinking bad thoughts about me.
Whether it was The Munsters, Bewitched, or Sammy the Way Out Seal, Mumy seemed ideal to fill a role wherever a precocious lad was needed. As an adult actor, Mumy continued his science fiction career. In addition to Lost in Space, he's also well known for playing Lanier, an intergalactic political aide on the popular series Babylon 5. Mumy has also gained a following as an accomplished musician, composer, and a solo artist. He and his childhood friend created the novelty hit Fishheads as the duo Barnes & Barnes, which gained popularity on the Dr. Demento radio show, according to the Dr. Demento website. Mumy also released children's albums for Rhino Records, including the Yogi Bear environmental album starring the signature Hanna-Barbera character. Bill Mumy also composed over 100 songs for the Disney series Adventures in Wonderland. His work on the show earned him a Daytime Emmy Award nomination for Outstanding Music Direction and Composition. British-born Angela Cartwright was no stranger to television performance when she blasted off as Penny Robinson in Lost in Space. From the age of 5, Cartwright appeared as Linda Williams in Make Room for Daddy, also known as The Danny Thomas Show. A decade later, she found herself dancing with Julie Andrews and the other Von Trapps as Brigitte in The Sound of Music. Cartwright followed her time on Lost in Space with further TV appearances, including a revival of Make Room for Daddy called Make Room for Granddaddy. Cartwright also participated in reunions with her fellow Lost in Space friends as yet another original cast cameo in the 1998 Lost in Space movie. Over the past several decades, Cartwright has become much more renowned for her work as a photographer and artist, and released several books on photography and cinema. Many of her fans think of her as an artist first, and some don't even connect her with Lost in Space or The Sound of Music. In 2016, Cartwright also published a Lost in Space photo collection in collaboration with her co-star Bill Mumy. Dr. Zachary Smith, whose sabotage sent the Robinsons off course, was played by the versatile Jonathan Harris. Before Lost in Space, his credits were primarily dramatic roles on The Twilight Zone and The Third Man, with some comedic turns on Father Knows Best and The Bill Dana Show. To prevent the original plan of Dr. Smith being killed off on Lost in Space, he deliberately transformed the character from an evil, calculating villain to a weak-willed mischief maker. Producer Irwin Allen and the CBS network loved it. The lighter tone lessened the violence of this family-based series. Harris continued to steadily work after Lost in Space on TV series like Sanford & Son and Get Smart. His voice acting career began in 1968 at Hanna-Barbera, where he voiced Athos and the Three Musketeers. He also contributed his voice to an animated version of Lost in Space. Harris began in association with the Filmation studio when he provided his voice for 1973's My Favorite Martians, a cartoon based on the 60s sitcom My Favorite Martian. Before long, Harris's voice was unmistakable across hundreds of cartoon performances, including appearances in Superman the Animated Series and Darkwing Duck. His career also extended to Disney Pixar films, where he voiced Manny the Praying Mantis in A Bug's Life and the Cleaner in Toy Story 2.
Oh, yet again, it is up to me to rescue the performance.
Harris was also a Saturday morning TV fixture in live action and animation, performing on shows such as Uncle Croc's Block and furthering his sci-fi resume on Space Academy and Arc 2. Sadly, Harris passed away in 2002, leaving an unparalleled legacy behind. Some Lost in Space viewers might be surprised to discover that there was a real person tucked away inside the robot, maneuvering it on the set. The role was filled by actor Bob May, who used his experience on the theater stage to give life to the computerized character. May's non-robot screen credits include playing a clown in the 1980 Jerry Lewis film Hardly Working. May passed in 2009, according to the Los Angeles Times, but the robot's legacy lives on. It was physically taxing to bring visual life to the mechanical member of the Jupiter 2 crew. Despite the challenge, May's efforts helped give the robot a personality that millions came to care about.
You mean you think you're gonna cry?
Yes. Please leave me. I do not want you to see me in this condition.
The robot's personality also came from his voice, provided by legendary actor and announcer Dick Tufeld. He was also the narrator of Lost in Space. Tufeld's distinctive voice was a TV favorite on countless series, including Surfside 6 and The Gallant Men. After Lost in Space, Tufeld was the announcer on The Time Tunnel, The Julie Andrews Hour, and Peyton Place. Tufeld's numerous cartoon credits include Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends and Super Friends, the legendary Superpowers show. As the robot, Tufeld was heard on The Simpsons and in the 1998 film version of Lost in Space. Tufeld continued to work as one of Disney's most familiar announcers throughout the late 20th century, narrating the Walt Disney World Parade broadcasts on ABC. He passed away in 2012. Debbie the Bloop was Lost in Space's simian semi-regular. She was rescued from a spaceship crash and became Penny Robinson's adopted pet and best friend. Debbie was played by Judy the chimpanzee. After her screen debut in Disney's The Misadventures of Merlin Jones and its sequel, The Monkey's Uncle, Judy was a toast of Hollywood, appearing on The Addams Family, Flipper, and The Munsters. Judy was also a regular on Daktari, a series about a veterinary clinic in Africa. In 1969, the Ocala Star-Banner reports that Judy also joined over 24 animal actors in a Florida training school that would later become Homosassa Springs Wildlife State Park. Joey Tata appeared regularly on Lost in Space, portraying one of the infamous space hippies. He also had several roles in Lost in Space's Wednesday night competition, Batman. In addition to series like Hunter and The Rockford Files, he's best known to Beverly Hills 90210 fans as Nat, the warm-hearted owner of the Peach Pit Diner. Tata later guest starred on TV's Charmed and returned as Nat in the 2008 90210 reboot. Tata passed away in August 2022 after a long bout with Alzheimer's disease, according to CNN. Bart LaRue was seen in a number of roles in 60s TV hits like Mission Impossible and Star Trek The Original Series. His baritone was heard in 3 Lost in Space episodes, including this classic in which the Robinsons returned to Earth, back in 1947.
It is believed that the occupants of the unidentified object are dangerous emissaries of a world not our own.
In addition to Star Trek and Lost in Space, LaRue also provided his voice in Medical Center and Land of the Giants. On camera, he appeared in popular series like The Brady Bunch. LaRue was also a writer, producer, director, and narrator of the 1979 horror film Satan War and the 1975 documentary The Ark of Noah, which he also narrated. LaRue passed away in 1990.
finding love on an adult film set, enlisting in the army to escape the past, and becoming the namesake of an entire theater. After the Addams Family, life stayed mysterious and spooky for the original cast. John Astin was a familiar face to many viewers before he played Gomez Addams. He made memorable appearances on The Twilight Zone and The Donna Reed Show before being cast in his own series, I'm Dickens, He's Spinster, which ran for 32 episodes from 1962 to 1963. The Addams Family opened many doors for Astin as he went on to appear in the likes of The Phyllis Diller Show, Night Gallery, and Night Court. He also reprised the role of Gomez in the 1977 TV movie Halloween with the New Addams Family. In 2002, Astin began teaching acting and directing at his alma mater of Johns Hopkins as he became the director of the Theater Arts and Studies Department and the Homewood Professor of the Arts. He's credited with revitalizing the university's theater department, and the campus theater is even named in his honor. Before playing Morticia Addams, Carolyn Jones had numerous roles in 1950s westerns and suspense films, including Alfred Hitchcock's 1956 classic, The Man Who Knew Too Much. She also earned an Oscar nomination for 1958's The Bachelor Party. Following the Addams Family, Jones regularly appeared on popular TV shows like Batman, Mod Squad, and Fantasy Island. She also rejoined her former castmates for the 1977 TV movie Halloween with the New Addams Family. Her final screen credit was a starring role in the 1980s soap opera Capital, on which she played the matriarch of the politically powerful Clegg family. Tragically, Jones died from colon cancer in 1983 at the age of 53. She was diagnosed the year before, but she was determined to play her part in Capital, and she was able to do so in a wheelchair.
Maybe we shouldn't have taken his axe away when he was a baby. He seemed so happy chopping up things. And it was good exercise.
Jackie Coogan's story is one of triumph over tragedy. Widely considered the first child star, this son of famous vaudeville performers began his film career when he was just a baby. Born in 1914, he was coming of age when the silent era ended, but his fame petered out when he was just 16. From 1930 to 1939, Coogan had only 8 screen appearances. He then enlisted for service in World War II and decided to give up acting entirely in 1950 and begin working as a salesman. His retirement was short-lived, though. Between 1951 and the premiere of The Addams Family, he had roles in over 70 films and TV shows. And Coogan's portrayal of the zany Uncle Fester was hardly the end of his screen career. He was a regular on the Red Skelton Hour, and he worked steadily on various other shows and films, including a memorable, somewhat unrecognizable turn on The Brady Bunch. He died in 1984 from heart failure at the age of 69. As the Addams' butler Lurch, Ted Cassidy was more seen than heard, with his mere presence dominating his scenes more than his dialogue ever could. His deep delivery of, "You rang," became one of the most memorable lines from the show, and his popularity even spawned a dance craze called the Lurch.
You're more than an employee to us.
You're like one of the family.
Cassidy's size and distinctive look made him the subject of typecasting throughout his career. He had been diagnosed with a condition called acromegaly, a pituitary disorder that causes excessive growth. Not only did this lead to him being nearly 7 feet tall, it was also responsible for his deep and booming voice. So, where there was a need for a towering actor, you could probably find Cassidy. His later roles included parts on such TV shows as Ironside and Star Trek. He also voiced numerous cartoon characters, and it was his voice that spoke the opening introduction to the Incredible Hulk TV series.
The creature is driven by rage and pursued by an investigative reporter.
Cassidy died young, just 46 years old. Doctors had discovered a large, non-malignant mass on his heart. Complications from the surgery to remove it were too much for him to handle, as he passed away in 1979. Also known by her stage name, Blossom Rock, Marie Blake played Grandmama on The Addams Family. Outside of The Addams Family, she was probably best known for her role as Sally the switchboard operator in the popular Dr. Kildare movie series. Sadly, Grandmama would be Blake's last role. She suffered a stroke soon after the second season of the show was in the can, which effectively ended her acting career. It also severely impacted her speech, making her unable to reunite with her former castmates for the TV movie Halloween with the New Addams Family. In her retirement, Blake resided at the motion picture theater and television country house and hospital. It was reported that she watched the TV movie from there, which aired months before she died in January 1978 at the age of 82. Ken Weatherwax had but one role on screen outside of the Addams Family. His screen debut was the classic TV western Wagon Train, and then he was cast as Pugsley Addams shortly afterward. After 64 episodes, Weatherwax didn't have another role until he lent his voice to a 1973 episode of the animated Addams Family series. He again played Pugsley in the 1977 TV movie Halloween with the New Addams Family. But from that point on, he was the victim of typecasting, as well as bullying and teasing from his schoolmates. As he put it in a 2008 interview, "Frankly, I didn't deal with it very well. I was kicked out of like 6 or 7 schools and went into the service at the age of 17.
I didn't have a problem with the recognition while I was in the service."
Weatherwax eventually began to work behind the scenes as he landed gigs as a grip and set builder for various productions. Then in 2014, he died of a heart attack at the age of 59. There were 2 funerals held, one for family and an additional one for fans. Though you never saw more than a giant head of hair that covered his entire body, Cousin It was easily one of the most memorable characters on the Addams Family. Played by Felix Silla, its dialogue never amounted to more than gibberish, totally obscuring Silla's identity in every way possible. As a little person working in Hollywood, this was par for the course for the actor. Like many little people, Silla struggled to find work in the industry beyond the most stereotypical ones. For example, he played both a troll and a goblin on episodes of the sitcom Bewitched and a circus performer on The Girl from U.N.C.L.E. He often found himself obscured behind bulky costumes and heavy makeup, thereby making him essentially unrecognizable to many viewers. Silla's size also allowed him to find work as a stunt double or stand-in. This led to gigs on films like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, E.T., and Howard the Duck. In April 2021, he died at the age of 84 following a battle with pancreatic cancer. Parley Bear played Mayor Arthur Henson on the Addams Family. That was one of many authority figures he portrayed throughout his career, as he was often cast as a judge, elected official, or police officer. Bear also played plenty of kind grandfatherly types and elderly curmudgeons. This included Doc Appleby on The Dukes of Hazzard, Judge Parker on LA Law, and in one of his final roles, Miles Dugan in the daytime soap The Young and the Restless. He also had some memorable film roles as well, including Grandpa Anderson in 1988's License to Drive, in which he was the overprotective owner of the vintage Cadillac that was left in the care of Corey Haim's father. Despite the typecasting in his later years, Bear felt that actors his age still played a vital role in the industry. When asked about his part in The Young and the Restless, he told the Los Angeles Times, "I hope it will bring to light the fact that people who have reached the zenith of 65 or more are not through."
No more Addamses. We already have too much.
Eddie Quillen arrived on the set of The Addams Family with decades of acting experience under his belt. From starring roles in various film shorts from the 1920s to supporting roles in dozens of Western films from the 1930s on, he had quite the resume. He then leapt into TV in the late 50s on a variety of shows, eventually making his way to 5 episodes of The Addams Family, where he played multiple characters. After his time on The Addams Family, Quillen made memorable appearances on the likes of Policewoman and Little House on the Prairie. His comedic talent was recognized by Hal Cantor, creator of the sitcom Julia, on which Quillen played the role of Postman Eddie Edson. In a 1981 interview with the Los Angeles Times, Quillen revealed, "The first thing I'd do when I got on the set was to see where the doors are, where the props are, and figure out what I might do in the way of funny business." Quillen died from cancer at the age of 83 in 1990. Another familiar face on The Addams Family was legendary character actor Vito Scotti. Before he played Sam Picasso and a couple of other characters, he was what the Los Angeles Times referred to as a modern man with 1,000 faces. His family came from Naples, Italy, and his Southern Italian heritage led him to roles that were frequently of Latino, Italian, or Middle Eastern origin.
Oh, Mr. Picasso, my husband's been telling me about you.
Oh, that's a lie. I run an honest gallery.
Scotti played a Romany man in an episode of The Andy Griffith Show, a Japanese submarine captain on Gilligan's Island, and various Native American roles in the Western Gunsmoke. On the big screen, he showed up in The Godfather as Nazarene. He continued to work steadily until he retired in 1995, appearing on scores of TV shows like Who's the Boss and Columbo. His last film role was the 1995 mob comedy Get Shorty. Off-screen, one of Scotty's passions included raising money for the Carmen Fund, which was named after his daughter. The charity was part of a high school's fund to assist handicapped students with financial help. Scotty's daughter was one of the first patients to undergo spinal implant surgery. He died in June 1995 at the age of 78. Rolf Sedan played suspicious postman Mr. Briggs on a few episodes of The Addams Family. He was a veteran actor with a long and storied career that began in the silent film era. With nearly 300 screen credits to his name before Addams Family, he made a name for himself as a bit player before gaining fame as a regular on The George Burns and Gracie Allen Show. Sedan's experience in radio, theater, and film kept him steadily working until the 1970s. He appeared on popular TV shows like Maude and Kung Fu, and in bit parts in films like the Mel Brooks classic Young Frankenstein. He retired in 1977, a few years before his death on September 15, 1982, at the age of 86. Child stars often have tragic stories, and sadly Lisa Loring, who played Wednesday Addams, is no different, as she became a mother at the young age of 15. She sporadically acted in small roles in the 70s and early 80s, and then she became a makeup artist for an adult film studio. It was on one such adult film that she met her third husband, actor Jerry Butler. The marriage didn't last, though, and Loring began to use heroin to cope. Compounding the stress in her life was the suicide of her friend, adult film star Kelly Van Dyke. But ultimately, Loring was determined not to be beaten. In 1992, she entered and completed rehab and got herself clean. She then worked in an interior design firm and has since racked up a few screen credits, the most recent being 2015's Dr. Spine. She now reportedly focuses mostly on her family and tours various conventions every year.
From a James Bond staple to a Karate Kid villain to real-life homicide, the lives of the Hawaii Five-0 cast after the series ended were anything but procedural. James Bond fans might recall Jack Lord as secret agent Felix Leiter in the first James Bond film Dr. No. His first leading role on a TV series was as rodeo rider Stony Burke on the one-season TV series of the same name, and he also guested on several hit shows, including The Untouchables and Rawhide. But Hawaii Five-0 was truly Jack Lord's show. When he took on the starring role of Detective Steve McGarrett in 1968, his contract included full control over the series. He served as unofficial producer and occasional director of the show for its 12-year run. When Hawaii Five-0 ended in 1980, Lord produced and directed a television film called M Station Hawaii, which he hoped would be picked up as a new series. According to his biography, Jack Lord Acting Life, he intended to be a producer and director of the series. When the series wasn't picked up by the network, Lord simply retired and turned his creative energies to his painting. His art was so successful that several of his works became part of museum collections around the world. Jack Lord never appeared in another acting role after Hawaii Five-0 and even turned down numerous offers to make cameo appearances on another hit show filmed in Hawaii, Magnum P.I. Lord and his wife Marie lived out the rest of their lives together in Hawaii. He passed away in the Aloha State in 1998 at age 77. Every fan of Hawaii Five-0 knows that Detective Steve McGarrett ended many of the episodes by instructing his partner, Detective Danny Williams, to gather the criminals and
book 'em, Dano.
James MacArthur portrayed the straight-laced, boyish police officer on the show from its debut in 1968 until one season before its run ended in 1980. The adopted son of Oscar-winning actress Helen Hayes, MacArthur was raised in and around the theater. He attended Harvard University but left school to pursue an acting career. With high-profile roles in hit movies like Swiss Family Robinson, MacArthur was already a rising star in Hollywood when he was offered the role of Danny Williams on Hawaii Five-0. He replaced Tim O'Kelly, the original actor cast in the role who did not test well with audiences.
I just can't crack 'em.
MacArthur saved much of his salary from the show and invested heavily in real estate in Hawaii, amassing a considerable fortune. MacArthur eventually grew bored with the character, leaving the show after its 11th season and returning to supporting roles on TV and the stage for the rest of his career. He returned to the role of Danny Williams in a 1997 sequel to Hawaii Five-0, in which the former detective had become governor of Hawaii, but the show was never aired. MacArthur passed away in 2010 at the age of 72. Cam Fun Chung played Detective Chin Ho Kelly on Hawaii Five-0. He was born in the Kalihi neighborhood of Honolulu in 1918. Chun was working as a boilermaker at the Pearl Harbor shipyard on December 7, 1941, when the harbor was attacked. He survived, but another tragedy struck 3 years later. 2 planes crashed into his home, taking the lives of his wife and children. Chun served as a police officer until retiring in 1959 to pursue acting, and began performing with the Honolulu Community Theater Group. The Hawaii Five-0 casting staff often turned to this group for background actors, so Chun didn't have to audition for the series. He played the role until 1978, when he felt the scripts had become stale and asked to be written off the show. Chun's later roles include the unaired 1997 Hawaii Five-0 TV movie sequel, even though his character was killed off in the original series. He also hosted a morning radio show in Hawaii in the 1980s and ran for governor in 1988. His campaign slogan was, "Give a damn, vote for Cam." He passed away in 2002 at the age of 84. Herman Wiedemeyer, known to fans as Duke Lakella on Hawaii Five-0, first gained fame as a football player. He was named an All-American while playing for St. Mary's College in California in 1945. He earned the nickname Squirmin' Herman and the Hula-Hipped Hawaiian because he was so tough on the defense. Wiedemeyer was inducted into both the National Football Foundation College Hall of Fame and the Hawaii Sports Hall of Fame. Wiedemeyer successfully ran for Honolulu City Council in 1968, then for Hawaii's House of Representatives in 1970 and 1972. He was appearing in small roles on Hawaii Five-0 at times during his political career, but in 1972, Wiedemeyer's opponent in the House of Representatives race complained that his appearance on the show violated the FCC's requirement that political candidates receive equal airtime. In response, a local TV station pulled a Hawaii Five-0 episode from the air. Nevertheless, Wiedemeyer eventually solidified the character of Duke Lakella during the 5th season. He remained with the show until its cancellation in 1980 and only appeared in 2 other acting roles before his death in 1999 at the age of 74. Harry Endo was working as a savings and loan executive when he was cast as forensic scientist Che Fong in Season 2 of Hawaii Five-0. Endo also worked as a newscaster for Honolulu station KHVH in the late 1960s and appeared in several local commercials for Territorial Savings Bank. Endo was offered a spot on Hawaii Five-0 while he was working on a commercial. Endo appeared in a few small TV roles after the show's end in 1980, including one episode of Magnum P.I. By the 1990s, Endo had returned to his roots as the vice president of marketing at the Honolulu Federal Savings and Loan Association. Endo passed away in 2009 at the age of 86 after suffering a stroke. Nicknamed Zulu in high school, Gilbert Lonnie Kauihi was a natural entertainer known for singing for any crowd he could find. He also worked as a disc jockey for a radio station and even tried his hand at stand-up comedy. He played Detective Kono Kalakaua on Hawaii Five-0 for 4 seasons, but he was fired in 1971 after getting into an altercation with publicist Len Wiseman and using racial slurs. Zulu reportedly expressed frustration with the limited nature of his role on the show.
May I?
Yeah, help yourself.
Chaser.
Kauihi created a nightclub act and continued to perform at local hotels with great success, but his life took a downward turn in the 1980s when he was convicted of negligent homicide after killing a bicyclist with his car. He received 1 year's probation, but his health began to fail. He was diagnosed with high blood pressure and had heart surgery in 2000. He was also diagnosed with diabetes and had to go on dialysis. A kidney transplant wasn't sufficient, and he was waiting for a second kidney when he passed away in 2004 at the age of 66. As Governor Paul Jameson, Richard Denning was the only actor to appear in all 12 seasons of Hawaii Five-0 besides Jack Lord. Denning started acting in college and worked in his father's clothing business.
That's not good enough.
Winning a contest on a radio program called Do You Want to Be an Actor led to a contract with Paramount Pictures. Denning enjoyed a steady career before joining the Navy in World War II. After the war, he gained more attention in iconic films like Creature from the Black Lagoon and An Affair to Remember. In addition to starring in the series Mr. and Mrs. North, Denning's television appearances included the 1966 musical Alice Through the Looking Glass and McCloud. But Hawaii Five-0 gave him his longest-running regular TV role. Since the show was shot on location in Hawaii, Denning and his wife moved to Maui instead of commuting from the mainland. When the show ended in 1980, Denning was 66 years old and the couple chose to remain in Hawaii. He went on to work with the Boy Scouts of America as an executive director and served on the Maui Chamber of Commerce. He passed away in 1998 at the age of 84. Al Harrington, Hawaii Five-0's Detective Ben Kukua, was born in American Samoa in 1935. He moved to Honolulu in 1938, and after graduating college, Harrington taught at the University of Hawaii while pursuing a career as an entertainer. Billing himself the South Pacific Man, Harrington sang and danced through the Waikiki entertainment circuit. His first television roles were small parts in Hawaii Five-0. When it was necessary to replace Zulu in 1972, Harrington joined the series in the regular Detective Kukua role, which he played for 3 years. After leaving Hawaii Five-0, Harrington appeared on classic shows such as The Jeffersons, Magnum P.I., and Scrubs. When CBS rebooted Hawaii Five-0, Harrington signed on to play a new character, surf shop owner Mamo Kahike, from 2011 to 2018. Harrington continued to perform as the South Pacific Man well into the 1990s and sang on a float during the 1990 Honolulu Thanksgiving Day Parade. His last role was on the Disney Plus series Yugi Kamealoha MD. He died in 2021 at the age of 85. Born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1915, Al Aben joined the cast of Hawaii Five-0 as medical examiner Doc Bergman from 1971 until 1979. Aben had a long career as a character actor, appearing in Broadway shows such as Pins and Needles, TV shows like Petticoat Junction, and many films, including a small role as Solly in the classic film Citizen Kane. When Aben was cast in Hawaii Five-0, he and his wife lived on the island for the first 4 years. In 1975, they returned to Los Angeles and he flew to Hawaii to play the role. After the series ended, Aben appeared in a 1999 episode of Everybody Loves Raymond and in the 2001 film Corky Romano. After retiring from acting, Aben spent his time serving his community, working with the Santa Monica Emeritus Players and reading for elementary school and kindergarten students, activities he kept up until he passed away in 2003 at the age of 88. Season 2 of Hawaii Five-0 introduced Peggy Ryan as Jenny Sherman, Steve McGarrett's secretary. Ryan was already a Golden Age Hollywood veteran. She began acting at the age of 5 and appeared in her first feature film when she was just 13. For 2 decades, she appeared in dozens of films, with box office stars like Abbott and Costello and Here Come the Coeds. She and musical legend Donald O'Connor became a top dancing team in several movies. Ryan's last film role was in All Ashore in 1953 opposite dancer Ray McDonald and Mickey Rooney. In 1958, she married newspaper columnist and novelist Eddie Sherman and moved to Honolulu. There she taught dancing and choreographed local stage productions until she was cast as Jenny Sherman. After Hawaii Five-0, she moved to Las Vegas, where she also taught and produced, remaining active in both until her death in 2004 at age 80. Hawaii native Danny Kamekona made his acting debut on Hawaii Five-0 in 1968. Kamekona played over 30 small roles on the show, but is most frequently recalled as Sergeant Nick Noble. Kamekona was with Hawaii Five-0 until the series ended in 1980, later appearing in such series as Magnum P.I., Sanford & Son, and Barnaby Jones. His most famous movie role was the villainous Sato in The Karate Kid Part 2. His other films include Black Widow, Problem Child, and Honeymoon in Vegas. His final acting role was Henry in a revival of Burke's Law from 1994 to 1995. Kamekona died in his sleep of natural causes in 1996 at the age of 60. Glenn Cannon joined the cast of Hawaii Five-0 in Season 4 as John Manicott, the Assistant District Attorney and later Attorney General. As a young actor, Cannon worked extensively on Broadway and in the early days of TV on classic shows like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, in which he played a killer on the run named Davy.
In case you're wondering, Davy was apprehended by the police.
Cannon was as much an educator as an actor. He moved to Hawaii in 1968 to accept the role of Professor of Drama at the University of Hawaii, a post he kept after landing Hawaii Five-0 and for the rest of his life. After Hawaii Five-0, Cannon's other TV work included a recurring role on Magnum P.I. He was president of his local Screen Actors Guild for over 20 years and directed over 160 local community theater plays. Cannon passed away in April 2013 at age 80. Hawaii Five-0 is such a strong concept that it's one of the few series with a successful reboot. But there will always be a special mahalo for the classic that first bid us aloha.
Who's the goat for goats who tripped their turnips off? And who's busy painting happy little trees? They smoked primetime, but did it all go up in flames? Here's the scoop on the OG cast of Dallas. During his lengthy acting career, Larry Hagman became best known for 2 roles, Major Anthony Nelson on I Dream of Jeannie and J.R. Ewing on Dallas, but while he clashed with writers, suffered a nervous breakdown, and tried to quit I Dream of Jeannie, he delighted in his role on Dallas, where he was the undisputed star. Still, as he once told USA Today, "I don't understand why people love J.R. so much." Even so, he admitted that playing such a cad was fun, and gave him an outlet for his darker impulses.
Let's not kid ourselves. The bad guys finish first, don't they?
But no character arc could keep Hagman's drug and alcohol addiction at bay. Before, during, and after Dallas, he drank heavily, at one point reaching 5 bottles of champagne a day. The habit caught up with him not long after the series wrapped in 1991. A year later, he was diagnosed with cirrhosis, and in 1995, cancer required him to undergo a liver transplant. But even then, he didn't give up drinking altogether. Hagman was also open about his experiments with LSD, which he said made him less afraid to die. The eccentric Hagman long depended on his wife to advise him, but she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2008. While filming the 2012 Dallas revival, Hagman was diagnosed with throat cancer. He died that year at age 81. The arch nemesis of J.R. Ewing was his brother-in-law and fellow oilman, Cliff Barnes, played by Ken Kercheval. He was the only actor besides Hagman to be with Dallas from the first season to the 14th. Even so, his early years with the series saw him build as a recurring character rather than a star player. Famous for dueling as bitter enemies, the 2 actors got along well in real life.
This time,
Barnes beat the hell out of a Ewing.
On the set of Dallas, Hagman urged Kercheval to give up smoking, but 2 years after the series ended, Kercheval, who had been smoking up to 3 packs of cigarettes a day while filming, was diagnosed with lung cancer. After undergoing a procedure to remove part of his lung in 1994, he made a full recovery. In his later years, Kercheval did some stage work in Britain and reunited with Hagman for the 2012 Dallas revival. In 2019, he died of complications of pneumonia at the age of 83. For most of Dallas, Patrick Duffy played younger son Bobby Ewing. The character's death midway through the series led to one of the most infamous retcons in TV history. After Bobby was revived, Duffy stayed with the show until its end in 1991. At that point, he hoped to jump from drama to full-blown comedy.
Well, I was ready. I'm not sure the world was.
His chance came when he was cast as the father in the sitcom Step by Step. The actor told Entertainment Tonight that it was the best role of his career. He and co-star Suzanne Summers became good friends, and the show ran for 7 seasons. TV was kind to Duffy a third time in 2006 when he picked up a recurring role as Stephen Logan on the soap The Bold and the Beautiful when the Dallas revival was set to begin. With Duffy attached to it, Logan was written out of the soap with the explanation that the character was moving to Dallas. Still, Duffy reprised the dramatic role 11 years later. Duffy's personal life suffered a blow after Dallas wrapped when his wife of almost 50 years, Carolyn Rosser, died of cancer in 2017. But in 2020, he and Happy Days alum Linda Pearl connected during the pandemic and have been in a relationship ever since. According to People, Duffy, now 74, still continues to act. During the first season of Dallas, the part of JR's wife, Sue Ellen Ewing, was so underdeveloped that the crew took to calling actor Linda Gray the so-called brunette on the couch, according to Texas Monthly. But during her downtime, Gray fleshed out the part, and her impromptu arguments with Larry Hagman perked the writer's ears. The antagonism between husband and wife built up over the years, but away from the camera, Gray socialized with Hagman and his wife. Gray stayed with Dallas for most of its run, though she did get frustrated with the reactionary nature of her character and all the women portrayed on the series. Her request to direct an episode was rejected by showrunner Leonard Katzman, who thought it might set a precedent for other women taking the director's chair. Still, after some persistence, Gray told OWN,
so they let me direct one.
Gray went on to continue to work as an actress, and not just for the small screen. She graced the stage as the fairy godmother in a pantomime version of Cinderella. And in 2016, she took over the part of Mrs. Robinson in the West End production of The Graduate. She also told Anderson Cooper that it's her leg on the poster for the film. Gray has also worked as a goodwill ambassador for the United Nations. As Barbara Bel Geddes once said of her acting career, via People, "They're always asking me to play well-bred ladies. I'm not very well-bred, and I'm not much of a lady." Her role as Ewing family matriarch Miss Ellie demanded high society. But the part of Maggie in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, which she originated in 1955, gave her the chance to hone her chops. The stage was where Bel Geddes got her start as an actor, and it's where she returned after a brief time in Hollywood.
I want to hear everything.
But her career was put on hold when her husband, Windsor Lewis, was diagnosed with cancer. He passed away in 1972, and Bel Geddes accepted a role on Dallas primarily to escape financial ruin from her late husband's medical bills. She told People in 1982, "When I'm not acting, I like to get as far away from it as I possibly can." She kept a home in Maine, where she supported her daughter's nonprofit, Lifeline for Wildlife Incorporated. After her 12th season with Dallas, Bel Geddes retired to write children's books and design greeting cards. After suffering a heart attack, she gave up smoking, but later died of lung cancer in 2005 at 82. Actor Jim Davis had been working in the industry for decades by the time Dallas premiered. He launched his career as a film actor in 1942 and was a regular in westerns. Both on the big and small screens, Dallas was a blend of soaps and westerns, and he was cast as the part of Ewing family patriarch Jock, and it brought Davis a whole new wave of fame.
He's telling it just like he sees it.
But the series would feature him in his last role. While filming season 4, Davis was diagnosed with bone marrow cancer. He continued to work, but his health deteriorated throughout the season. Shots were designed so he could remain seated, and his hair loss from treatment was covered up. After filming wrapped, Davis died in 1981 at the age of 65. Dallas never recast the part of Jock. He was eventually written out through a helicopter crash during the show's 5th season. Victoria Principal had mixed feelings about her stint on Dallas. She told Texas Monthly that she was one of the few who realized that the show would be a big hit, and she enjoyed playing the part of Pam Barnes Ewing, the Juliet to Bobby's Romeo. But Principal felt that the women on Dallas were always an afterthought compared to the men, particularly after season 5. By season 7, she made plans to leave. At that time, she told Entertainment Weekly that she turned down a record-breaking offer to stay. The negotiation tactics they used to try to keep her on the show and the way they characterized her departure further soured Principal's attitude. She spent several years worrying that the show promoted and romanticized greed.
Well, are you happy now? Not really.
She eventually reconciled herself to the series, but after a few more years as an actor and as a producer with her own company, she decided to make a change. A few years after leaving Dallas, she founded Principal Secret, a skincare company, and slowly phased acting out of her life to focus all her attention on her business. When Dallas was revived in 2012, she was one of the few living members of the original cast who did not participate. Principal introduced a second skincare line, Reclaim Botanical, in 2013. She also maintains a ranch for rehabilitating animals of all kinds, from miniature horses to goats to a few full-sized horses too. Charlene Tilton was only 19 when she first appeared on Dallas as the spoiled niece Lucy. Coming from a difficult childhood with an unstable mother and absent father, Tilton jumped at the opportunity.
And I said, that's my part.
She also became good friends with Larry Hagman, and when Lucy was written off the show in 1985 due to the writer's inexperience with bringing a young character to life, Tilton suspects that Hagman lobbied to bring her back. She returned in 1988 before leaving again 2 years later. After a tumultuous marriage during her time on the series and a relationship with musician Dominic Allen, Tilton settled into a happy long-term partnership with cinematographer Chetty Hart in 2001. Tragically, he died of heart failure right before Christmas in 2009 after falling into a depressive state that saw her drinking and smoking heavily. Tilton found solace in volunteering with Actors for Autism. In her own career, Tilton has enjoyed the range of roles she gets with age. Only 5 feet tall, she considers herself best suited to character parts. Her recent work has included faith-based streaming projects, and as of 2023, her most recent role was in the PureFlix feature Heaven Sent. Steve Canale began his acting career working with some of the most famous directors in movie history. Even though his parts in Sergio Leone's My Name is Nobody and Steven Spielberg's The Sugarland Express were minor ones, he had amassed a handful of film credits by the time he was cast as ranch foreman Ray Krebs in Dallas. Canale was skeptical of the show in its early years, doubting both the wisdom of shooting on location in the winter as well as the viability of the series. As production went on, he warmed up to it enough to consider naming his daughter Dallas. For the record, his wife nixed that idea. Limited material made him consider going back to films, but Larry Hagman's advice and the revelation that Ray was an illegitimate Ewing convinced him to stay. When Patrick Duffy thought he might leave the series for film work, it was Canale who advised him against it.
I don't want to talk about it now, Bob.
Canale continued to act in film and TV after the original Dallas ended. When the series was revived in 2012, he was back as Ray, though not as a series regular. He has added no acting credits since the revival ended in 2014, and instead, he's been devoting his time and energy to his work as a watercolor artist. The part of Willard Digger Barnes, patriarch of the Ewing's rival oil clan on the series, was played by 2 different actors. Keenan Wynn spent a longer time in the role, stepping in during the second season, but during the initial miniseries, Digger was played by David Wayne. Wayne's acting career spanned 50 years. Born Wayne McKeegan, according to the New York Times, he launched a stage career with the Cleveland Shakespeare Repertory Company in 1936. He then moved to Broadway after serving as an ambulance driver during World War II, and he became the first winner of the Tony Award for Best Supporting or Featured Actor in a Musical for his part in Finian's Rainbow in 1947. He took home another Tony for his work in The Tea House of the August Moon.
You've got the most peculiar vision I ever saw.
Why do you say that?
Because you're reading that book upside down.
Dallas wasn't Wayne's only on-camera role. He appeared in a wide range of movies from the 1950s through the 80s, from the screwball comedy How to Marry a Millionaire to the sci-fi flick The Andromeda Strain. On TV, he guest starred as the Mad Hatter on the original Batman series. Last credited for The Survivalist in '87, Wayne died of lung cancer at his home in 1995 at the age of 81.
For those who were hoping the music never ends, these days are sadly over. But just because Happy Days ended doesn't mean the cast stopped working. For the first 7 seasons of Happy Days, Ron Howard starred as the show's main protagonist, Richie Cunningham. Richie starts the series out in high school before eventually graduating and attending college. He has a sister named Joni, and he's best friends with Warren Potsy Weber, Ralph Malph, and Arthur the Fonz Fonzarelli. Richie and his friends are always trying to meet women, and he eventually marries Lori Beth Allen. Richie leaves the show after season 7, joining the United States Army with Ralph. He does return for the final season, briefly reconnecting with his family before moving to Los Angeles. Off-screen and outside of Happy Days, Howard has had an incredibly successful career in Hollywood. He got his start in the 1950s appearing on shows like The Twilight Zone. In the 1960s, he famously played Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show for more than 240 episodes. After Happy Days, Howard's career as a director and producer started to take off, and that is where he found his greatest success. Some of his most popular films include Apollo 13, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, A Beautiful Mind, the Robert Langdon series, and Solo: A Star Wars Story. He is widely considered one of the most influential men in Hollywood history and is still producing films through 2023. From 1974 to 1984, Arthur the Fonz Fonzarelli was the epitome of cool. Portrayed by Henry Winkler, the Fonz can start a jukebox just by punching it, has the slickest dance moves, drives an iconic motorcycle, and is a massive sex symbol. He lives above the Cunningham's garage and is the archetypal 1950s Italian-American greaser. In contrast, Winkler is a graduate of Yale University, and Happy Days was truly his breakout role. He starred on the show for all 11 seasons and more than 250 episodes, as well as on spin-offs Laverne and Shirley and Joni Loves Chachi. After his role as the Fonz ended, Winkler continued to act and has put together an immensely successful career. Some of his most memorable projects include The Waterboy, Holes, Arrested Development, Royal Pains, and Barry.
Tell him to go f*** himself. I can tell Ron Howard to go f*** himself. I can tell him to shove it up his I just can't do it now because I'm in front of a jury.
For his work on Barry, Winkler earned 3 Primetime Emmy nominations, including 1 win in 2019 for Outstanding Supporting Actor. This was in addition to his 3 nominations during his time on Happy Days. Winkler is still active and has several projects scheduled through 2023. Long before he stole hearts as Charles on Charles in Charge, Scott Baio had a memorable turn as Chachi Arcola on Happy Days for more than 130 episodes. Chachi is the Fonz's younger cousin, and they develop a lovable bond over his time on the show. From 1982 to 1983, both Chachi and his on-screen love interest Joni Cunningham left Happy Days for the spin-off Joni Loves Chachi, but they returned after its short and unsuccessful run. As soon as Happy Days ended, Baio found himself with a lead role in Charles in Charge, which he would play for 126 episodes through 1990. In the 2000s, he played Bob Loblaw on Arrested Development for a total of 5 episodes, which reunited him with his Happy Days co-stars Henry Winkler and Ron Howard. Some of his most recent work was in 2021, where he starred in Courting Mom and Dad alongside Christy Swanson. In 2018, multiple former co-stars of Baio accused him of sexual assault during their time working together on Charles in Charge. Baio denied the accusations and no charges were filed. If you or anyone you know has been a victim of sexual assault, help is available. Visit the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network website or contact RAIN's National Helpline at 1-800-656-HOPE 4673. Over the first 3 seasons of Happy Days, fans got to know Marcia Sims, played by actress Beatrice Colin. She works at Arnold's Drive-In as a roller skating car hop, and at night she waitresses at a coffee shop. Martha's co-worker is Wendy, and the two have constant interactions with Richie Cunningham and his friends. Sims' character is largely written out of the show after season 3, though she does make a few appearances later, sometimes with a different actress playing her. For Colin, Happy Days was her breakthrough role, and it led to a part in Wonder Woman from 1976 to 1977. After leaving the show, Colin had minor roles on huge TV shows like Baywatch, Night Court, Chips, and Mr. Belvedere, as well as Mel Brooks' film High Anxiety. In addition to her time on the big screen, Colin also worked prominently in theater. Her last acting credit was an appearance on the Nickelodeon show The Secret World of Alex Mack. She played Ms. Tucker during the season 4 episode The Switch in 1997. Colin passed away on November 18, 1999 from lung cancer at the age of just 51. Anson Williams played Warren Potsy Weber on Happy Days for more than 200 episodes. Potsy is one of the few to appear as a regular character in every season of the show. He even stays around after Richie and Ralph leave to join the army at the end of season 7. Potsy is known for being somewhat dim-witted but caring, and is constantly scheming with Ralph. For Williams, he struggled to find success as an actor after Happy Days and has only appeared sporadically over the past 4 decades since its end, most notably in Boy Meets World and Baywatch. He also reprised his role as Potsy in Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Williams began a directing career in the 1980s and has helmed a number of episodes of TV shows. These include 4 episodes of Diagnosis Murder, which starred former castmate Scott Baio, as well as episodes of Love Boat and Beverly Hills 90210. From 2008 to 2013, Williams directed 31 episodes of The Secret Life of the American Teenager. Outside of Hollywood, he tried his hand at politics. In 2022, he ran for mayor of Ojai, California, but he lost the election by only 42 votes. Affectionately known as Mr. C by his son's friends, Tom Bosley played family patriarch Howard Cunningham on Happy Days for all 11 seasons and 255 episodes. Mr. Cunningham is the father of Richie and Joni, and he's married to Marion. He owns Cunningham's Hardware and drives a beloved DeSoto car for most of the series. Much of the time, Mr. Cunningham can be seen reading the daily newspaper, and he's known for his humorous outlook on his son's generation. Bosley was nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award in 1978 for his role on Happy Days. Outside of Happy Days, Bosley had success both on stage and on the silver screen. His first appearances on TV came in the mid-1950s. Most people knew him from The Dean Martin Show, and for his Tony Award-winning role as Fiorello LaGuardia in the Broadway musical Fiorello. After Happy Days, Bosley's biggest successes came as Sheriff Amos Tupper on Murder, She Wrote and the titular character of Father Dowling Mysteries. He continued to act mainly on TV through 2010, playing a variety of characters and doing animated voiceover work. Bosley died from cancer on October 19, 2010. As the wife of Howard and the mother of both Richie and Joni, Marion Cunningham had a lot on her plate during her 11 seasons on Happy Days. Largely playing the role of a 1950s homemaker, Mrs. Cunningham is warm, friendly, and incredibly caring towards her family. The Fonz refers to her as Mrs. C, and in turn, she is the only one who calls him by his first name, Arthur.
Don't ever call me Arthur.
She is sympathetic when needed, but she's also not afraid to step up and put her family in line when necessary. For the entire 255-episode run, Marion Ross played the role of Mrs. Cunningham. Beginning her career in the mid-1950s, she played many roles on TV and in movies. From 1965 to 1966, she appeared in more than 150 episodes of the soap opera Paradise Bay as Mary Morgan. After playing Mrs. Cunningham, Ross continued to act regularly on TV and in movies, including 33 episodes as Sophie Berger on Brooklyn Bridge. In the 1990s, she appeared as Grandma Foreman in That 70s Show, and in the 2000s, she became Grandma SquarePants within the SpongeBob SquarePants universe. During her career, Ross has racked up 5 Primetime Emmy nominations, and she has her own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Ross was still acting through the early 2020s, playing Marion in Senior Entourage in 2021. Don Most played the lovable redhead Ralph Malph on Happy Days for 167 episodes. Known for his practical jokes, Ralph is always trying to scrounge up a date, but he doesn't always have the best success. When Richie joins the army at the end of season 7, Ralph does too, only briefly reappearing in the final season.
I thought you weren't getting discharged for another 3 months.
Yeah, well, I threatened to re-up, so they let me out early.
Most had a few roles before Happy Days, but his portrayal of Ralph was his big breakthrough. He has acted regularly on TV through the 2020s, including voicing Styles in the 80s Teen Wolf cartoon and starring in a few episodes of Murder, She Wrote. From the 2000s on, Most had roles in Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Glee, and the 2016 The Odd Couple reboot. In addition to acting, Most has directed 4 films, winning a 2007 Newport Beach Film Festival award for his movie Moolah. He is still acting as of early 2023, including a role in the Italian film Vicino al Verbo. In 2011, Most, along with former co-stars Erin Moran, Anson Williams, Marion Ross, and the estate of Tom Bosley, filed a lawsuit against CBS. The lawsuit alleged CBS owned the actors millions over merchandise. There was a settlement the following year, though terms were not publicly disclosed. The youngest of the Cunningham clan, Joni is known for being sarcastic and sassy. She's also known for interrupting her brother at the least opportune times. In addition to Richie, the Fonz also takes on an older brother-like role with Joni, often referring to her as Shortcake. She eventually falls in love with Chachi Arcola after years of rejecting him, and they get married in the series finale. Erin Moran played Joni Cunningham for the entirety of Happy Days, as well as on the ill-fated series Joni Loves Chachi. After her role as Joni ended, Moran acted sporadically over the next few decades, most notably in Dickie Roberts' former child star and in the parody flick Not Another B Movie. In 2017, she died from cancer at the age of 56. Though his character only made guest appearances on Happy Days, Pat Morita's portrayal of Arnold Takahashi was both memorable and funny. His character took on the name Arnold after purchasing the restaurant Arnold's Drive-In because everyone thought the establishment was named after him.
Why'd you change your name?
What change? I buy a restaurant, had a big sign, Arnold's. Sign's very expensive.
He left the show after season 3, selling his business to Al DeVecchio, but he did return for some guest appearances in the final few seasons. Morita began his acting career in the 1960s, appearing on shows like MASH, Hawaii Five-0, The Odd Couple, and Columbo. In the 2 decades after Happy Days ended, Morita found regular work both on TV and in the movies. Arguably, he is most well known for his turn as karate expert Mr. Miyagi in the original Karate Kid series. Morita was nominated for an Oscar and a Golden Globe, as well as a Razzie, for his role in those films. Additionally, he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1994. After nearly 40 years in the business, Morita passed away on November 24, 2005 in Los Angeles, California. He died of natural causes at the age of 73. One of the most lovable secondary characters on Happy Days is Al DeVecchio, the later proprietor of Arnold's Drive-In. He was played by Al Molinaro for 8 seasons and 146 episodes. Molinaro also played Al's twin brother, Father Anthony DeVecchio, for 2 episodes. Al took over Arnold's following the departure of Arnold Takahashi in Season 3, and he held on to the restaurant until the end of Season 9. It was then that Al's character left to be on Joni Loves Chachi, only returning to Happy Days as a guest in the future. Prior to playing Al, Molinaro had established himself in Hollywood through his portrayal of Officer Murray Greschler on The Odd Couple from 1971 to 1975. He had a few roles after Happy Days, including a starring turn as Joe Alberghetti on the short-lived TV show The Family Man. His final role was a reprisal of Al from Happy Days for Weezer's Buddy Holly music video. Molinaro died on October 30th, 2015 from gallbladder complications. He was 96 years old. Jenny Piccolo made her first appearance on Happy Days during the opening episode of Season 8, but her character was already well known to many fans. For the prior 7 seasons, she had been frequently mentioned as Joni's best friend, but was never actually seen. Jenny was eventually portrayed by Kathy Silvers, and she appeared on the show for 55 episodes over 4 seasons. Off-screen, Silvers is the daughter of famous actor Phil Silvers, and Happy Days was her acting debut. After the show ended, she continued to act through the 1980s and sporadically in the 1990s. Some of her biggest credits include a starring role in Foley Square and supporting roles in Encino Woman and Sergeant Bilko. Silvers has not acted since 1996. In 2007, she released a Happy Days-themed cookbook, Happy Days Healthy Living, from sitcom team to the health food scene.
After starting as a radio series, The Lone Ranger kicked off its 9-year, 221-episode television run in 1949. Here's what the cast did after the series came to an end more than 65 years ago. Besides the title character, nobody was more important to the Lone Ranger than his companion Tonto, who was played throughout the series by Jay Silverheels. According to the Lone Ranger's origin story, he and Tonto crossed paths when they were both kids. The Lone Ranger found Tonto after his mother and sister had been killed in an ambush by rival natives. The Ranger helped nurse Tonto back to health before giving him a horse so he could find his father. In return, Tonto gave him his good luck ring. Years later, when the Lone Ranger and his fellow Texas Rangers were ambushed by Butch Cavendish and his gang, Tonto came to his aid. Tonto recognized his good luck ring, which had since been made into a necklace.
Why, you Kimosabe. Kimosabe?
Silverheels was himself a Native American of the Canadian Mohawk tribe. He also played the Native American Chief Geronimo in a number of movies in the 50s. Before becoming an actor, Silverheels was both a Golden Gloves boxer and a lacrosse player. He was instrumental in getting recognition for Native Americans in Hollywood and helped found the Indian Actors Workshop. In 1979, he was honored with a Hollywood Walk of Fame star, the first Native American to receive one. After suffering a stroke in the 70s, Silverheels died from pneumonia in 1980. Clayton Moore was by far the most recognizable actor to portray the title character on the Lone Ranger TV series. The Lone Ranger was a former Texas Ranger who became an anonymous crime fighter following the death of several of his fellow officers. They were led into a trap by outlaw Butch Cavendish, and only the Lone Ranger survived. Tonto found him lying by the river, almost near death, and saved his life. Moore played the Lone Ranger for 169 episodes, appearing in every season except for the third, in which he was replaced by John Hart. Moore got his start acting in the 1930s, and he was a consistent presence in many westerns in the 40s and 50s. His stints on the Lone Ranger were his last significant acting roles, and he only acted once more in a guest role on The Greatest American Hero in 1986. Well after the series went off the air, Moore lived and breathed the life of the Lone Ranger for the rest of his days. Moore would appear at public and private events as the Lone Ranger, and he identified strongly with the Ranger's creed in his personal life. He became a member of the Cowboy Hall of Fame and got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1987. Moore died in 1999 from a heart attack at age 85. John Hart only played the Lone Ranger for one 52-episode season in 1952 and 1953, but he made an everlasting impression with his solid acting and rugged good looks. Hart had previously played supporting roles in 2 episodes in the first season, but returned as the main character for every episode of the 3rd season in Clayton Moore's absence. Like Moore, Hart also started acting in the late 1930s, appearing in many westerns. Following his brief stint as the Lone Ranger, Hart continued acting regularly through the late 1970s. His final role was on the TV show Happy Days, in which he reprised his role as the Lone Ranger.
I'd like to say it gives me great pleasure to meet a man who has patterned his life after mine.
In 1970, he appeared in the comedic film The Finks as the Lone Ranger alongside Jay Silverheels as Tonto, where they played humorous versions of their former characters. Hart was also an actual, real-life part-time cowboy growing up. He was also a filmmaker, has a Hollywood Walk of Fame star, and was a U.S. Army veteran of the Second World War. He died in 2009 at the age of 91, reportedly suffering from dementia. As the evil Butch Cavendish, Glenn Strange had a short but very memorable run on The Lone Ranger. Strange played Cavendish for 4 episodes during the first season, including the 3-part origin story spanning the first 3 episodes. Cavendish was the villain who lured the Lone Ranger and his band of Texas Rangers into the ambush at Bryant's Gap, which led to the death of 5 Rangers, as well as the birth of the Lone Ranger. Eventually, Cavendish would be caught and sent to jail for life, though in later rebooted versions, he is sometimes killed. In addition to portraying Cavendish, Strange also made 4 other appearances on the Lone Ranger in the 3rd and 4th seasons, playing various secondary characters. Strange is probably best known for his portrayal of Sam Noonan in the drama Gunsmoke for more than 240 episodes from 1961 to 1973, and as the Wolfman in 1942's The Mad Monster. In all, Strange managed to appear in more than 300 movies and in around 500 TV shows. He was also a real-life cowboy and a stuntman to boot. Strange died from cancer at the age of 74 in 1973. For 14 episodes over 3 seasons, Chuck Courtney played the role of Dan Reed on The Lone Ranger. Reed was an orphan and the nephew of the Lone Ranger, with his father being the Ranger's older brother, also named Dan Reed.
What's your name, Sonny?
Dan Reed.
Live around here?
Why all the questions? I haven't done anything wrong.
The younger Reed was still a boy when his father was killed during the Cavendish ambush. He lived with his grandma Frisbee after his mother also died. Courtney officially started his career in 1950 with The Lone Ranger, but he had several small uncredited roles before that. After his time as Reed ended, Courtney continued to be a successful actor in Hollywood, racking up title after title. Some of his most notable roles included stints on Dragnet, The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin, and Star Trek. In addition to his work as an actor, Courtney also appeared in 51 movies as a highly regarded stuntman. His last work as a stuntman was for the 1990 Clint Eastwood and Charlie Sheen film The Rookie, at which point he was in his late 50s. Courtney died by suicide in 2000 at the age of 69. If you or anyone you know is having suicidal thoughts, please dial or text 988 to speak with the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You can also seek help by visiting 988lifeline.org.